Well, good morning and welcome to Bound for Glory.
Pumped, massive show.
You just want to cut over the top,
Yeah, just a little.
from the outset. Yeah, good morning. Huge week in football, but before we get to it, I think we should introduce the panel. Boys.
Matt Marsden over here.
Ethan Meldrum.
Pralab Gupta.
Damon Jackman. Go Carlton.
And I'm Ben Kazupi, and boys, have we seen the champs being dethroned?
A little bit, I think. I think injuries has a lot to play with it, but they were useless last night.
Absolutely. I think it's a bit too early to tell, but I still think Hawthorn showed a bit more than Carlton have so far, though.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, in their state last night, they didn't really play like a top 4 team. They were...
Is that Collingwood or is that
Collingwood?
Carlton?
No, Carlton were magnificent. You can't really sort of have too many bad words to say about Carlton. Their disposal efficiency was good.
To say Collingwood was average is a bit of an understatement. They got smashed in all the key areas last night. Inside 50s, 58-39 Carlton's way. Hit-outs, 56-26 Carlton's way. Tackles, 53-47 Carlton's way. They got dominated.
Well, even their ruck structure, it was practically non-existent. I mean, Wood...
apparently the new tactic for Jolly is to not jump. It's not really working out for him, I don't think.
Well, it didn't look like it was working. Even Wood looked odd when he went forward. He was double-teamed. Collingwood really bombed the ball. There was no structure.
Look, when Collingwood went forward, they looked damaging, but the problem is that Carlton was dominating out of the midfield, so they always had first chance at the ball. If you always have first chance to score, you're going to win.
The thing was, without ball as well, they really lost out in the contested possessions. I mean, Judd and Murphy were just killing it. And Pendles was missing as well.
Yeah, Pendlebury was very, very ordinary.
Very well tagged as well, like Pendlebury.
Yeah, well, massive props to Andy Carrazzo as well. 29 disposals and a goal while he was tagging out Pendlebury.
And a lot of them were contested, and a lot of them were really efficient. I was looking up his stats late in the game, and he was really efficient with his disposal by foot and by hand. Really, really good performance from him.
I mean, he was best of field. Who else last night caught you?
Murphy.
Yeah,
39 touches, 2 goals. That's just an incredible performance. He's really stamped himself as one of the best in the game, I reckon.
Scotland off half-back was brilliant. They threw him in the middle in the first quarter, and he really started that off because he won a few clearances, and that sort of hard body at the contest really helped.
It was one of those performances where everybody seemed to contribute evenly, and it was just good to watch from, I'd hope to think, from a neutral point of view, and especially from a Carlton supporter point of view.
I mean, just, we look at Carlton, they played well, but Collingwood, they really lacked that hunger that they've had for the last couple of years. They really, really dominated. They looked to attack. They looked to out-muscle the opposition. It just wasn't there last night.
Everybody had Collingwood. Basically, I think everybody in this room had Collingwood in their top 4. Is it still the case? We still got Collingwood up there?
You'd say so, but not on last night. I mean, Ball and Reid to go down, that really puts a massive blow in their season. And, the moment you lose 5 or 6 games, that really starts to make your top 4 chances drift.
Well, I think Collingwood can still make top 4 fairly comfortably because I don't think West Coast or Adelaide can push into the top 4. I reckon West Coast injuries with LeCras and Nikoski haven't really got... I don't see them scoring as many goals as they can last year. Embley going down as well for 12, 16 weeks with that shoulder he did. I don't think they'll be able to cut into the top 4 ahead of Collingwood.
Yeah, I think West Coast probably will make the top 4. I think Hawthorn are certainties, Geelong will make it, and the real question is West Coast, Collingwood. I think Freo could be a smoky, although I think they're more sort of top 8 rather than top 4.
After watching Freo last week against the Swans, they're not top 4. Sydney played them the way they wanted to play them, and I still think Sydney won't make finals.
Look, before we veer off the Carlton-Collingwood topic, just quickly, I have 2 roasts that I have to get out of the way. Firstly, Scott Pendlebury. Look, that was embarrassing, honestly. He basically left the role to Swan when ball went off, and it was just to be reduced to playing a small forward role as a dominant midfielder is honestly just embarrassing, and it hurt Collingwood more than I can possibly describe. That's number 1. Number 2, Nick Maxwell. It's not because he played a bad game or anything like that. It's the fact that he showed a lack of leadership. And what I'm talking about is Reid went off injured. You got Jared Waite and you got Sean Hampson, 2 big boys. You would think that somebody is experienced like Maxwell would go and take one of them. What did he do? he told Tuvey and Goldsack to go man up on them, while he defended Paul Bauer and Michael Jamieson, who are part-time forwards at best.
I say the only blokes that played for Collingwood last night that can hold their head up high were probably Sidebottom.
Yep, Sidebottom was actually
maybe
very
Shaw
good.
And maybe Clark. Other than that, it just falls away. Maybe Keefe, he was okay. It just falls away after that. They were inspired.
Look, the chances of Collingwood having 2 games in a row were very likely, so you'd think they'd bounce back next week for their third.
Well, they play Port next week, they play Essendon, they play the Bulldogs, they play Brisbane. They could still, in reality, be, 6-1 in the top 4. And
they've lost 2 already. They lost to Hawthorn.
They lost their first round.
5-2, assuming they win their next 4.
5-2 historically puts you in the top 4 after 7 rounds, and it doesn't really change that much.
If not 5th or 6th, but I don't think you can really have a crack at Pendlebury for one off night, considering he's been one of the most, probably the most consistent performer in the league, I reckon, over the last 2 years.
That's fair, but it was a big stage and he needed him to stand up. Collingwood really needed him to do something, especially when ball went off the ground and he went missing.
I think what they are missing is sort of composure from half-back, bringing the ball back into the middle, and that's probably what Leon Davis probably did last year, and now he's missing, and they haven't found a replacement yet.
I mean, the thing you say about Pendlebury is standing up in big games. The thing was that, when Pendlebury can't stand up in big games, who else is going to do it?
It wasn't that's not the issue I'm talking about. It's not that he didn't stand up in a big game. It's that they needed him to stand up while ball went off. It was Swan was a lone ranger in the midfield and Sidebottom.
On that, Buckley, what does that tell us about last night?
He's inexperienced.
Well,
I know that's obvious to say, but he looks he's very headless chickeny. If that's a description.
He's a first-year coach. I think he did. It's not that he didn't get the players up for the game. It's not that they're not playing for him. It's just there was no structure last night. They bombed the ball long, towards Cloak, and they put it on the headed doors, and 3 or 4 Carlton players would come over the top, ball would hit the deck, and then they just run it out and they'd score. That's what last night was. And Buckley's got maybe find another way to make him play, because that was disgraceful.
I think Buckley needs to have a chat with Rodney Eade and just basically say, I am a first-year coach. I need as much help as possible. It's what James Ed has done with Bomber Thompson, and it's worked out quite well for him.
And I was just going to say, on that, one roast from me, and being the Collingwood supporter, one player who I thought has probably had a pretty good deal over the last couple of years, and I love him, but Harry O'Brien, you need to start manning the hell up, okay? We know you can run, we know you've got a strong body, we know you can boot it a mile, but for the love of God, please, I know you destroy Stephen Milne every single time, but this is a different kettle of fish, so please, just man up for once. Thank you.
I think it was a pretty big reality check for Collingwood having so many people out, and a lot of players are going to be forced into playing roles that they're not familiar with, and that'll happen over the next 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, especially with the injury list getting longer. It's harsh to roast them, but it's deserved.
And the thing is, this is what we promote on Bound for Glory. If you think someone should be able to get stuck into teams, you call up a 3AW, you call up a Triple M. You don't necessarily get that sort of proper feedback. You don't get all of your say. Here at Bound for Glory, starting next week when we do go live, boys. How awesome is that?
10 a.m. Saturday mornings, 90.7 FM.
Exactly.
We're on radio.
Exactly. We want you to call in. We want you to have your say. You can text us. We'll give you all that info during the week, and it'll be a massive, massive show. We've got some awesome guests lined up for you. But today, big show, boys.
You got a massive show. We got plenty of guests coming in as well. Who have we got?
We've got Warnie from Dream Team Talk. We've got Jordan Bannister.
Ex-AFL player, now AFL umpire, my personal man crush.
Exactly. He's been pretty good the first 2 games. Not a fault. He put wrong.
Putty foot wrong, is that?
Exactly, because it's that early in the morning and we talk absolute rubbish.
And who else we got? We got someone else here. Who have we got?
We've got our mate, the Sarge Supercoach. He's doing the fist pumps in the back of the studio and bowing and all sorts of ridiculous things. He'll be on later to discuss
more than Harry O'Brien.
That's extremely difficult.
And don't forget our favourite segment, of course, CSI.
Oh, it's back by popular demand, boys.
It's probably worse than ever as well.
Yeah, so you better keep listening because it's a magnificently horrible segment. And look,
it's so bad, it's good.
Usually,
yes, that's it.
I gladly jump in front of the gun and take responsibility for anything this show does, but this is beyond my control now. What have you done? You just,
If you don't like it, text in next week.
Yeah, if you don't like it, deal with it.
For now, you got to deal with it. All right, so we'll move on with the show. Look, throughout the week, I thought I'll sit down and I'll do an in-depth analysis of the competition as it is, throw out the ladder completely, and look at the teams as individuals rather than where they're ranked at the moment. And this is last night kind of threw that out a little bit, considering two premiership contenders clashed and there was a big result. But up until round 2, these are the results that I came across. It's quite interesting. The first 2 rounds have shown that the top 4 is a race between 5 teams: Hawthorn, Carlton, Collingwood, Geelong and West Coast. And the gap between these first 5 teams and the rest of the competition is either going to open and close significantly over the next few weeks. But initial thoughts are that the premiership race is between these 5 teams. Does anybody agree with that or disagree with that?
I think that's spot on. I mean, Praylab mentioned Fremantle before. What was your reason behind Fremantle? And we'll get to Fremantle in a sec, but just Praylab, why did you think Fremantle were an outside chance?
I think last year they were cruel by injury. Now you've got Ross Lyon, who I rate very highly, although I do think they are a year or 2 away as well. So I think they probably won't be top 4, but potentially they could win a final. I'd expect them to.
Do you think that defensive game plan he's got with them, because they're a more offensive side? I mean, they've got players like Fife, Mundy, Ballantyne, players that attack the play more than, play that chip, subdued brand of football.
I think the defensive game plan with St Kilda, I think Fremantle have a better list than St Kilda. St Kilda had probably a poorer bottom 8 players than Fremantle do. So I think with Fremantle, he can actually implement his game plan a lot more effectively than he would have done at St Kilda. And he almost won St Kilda 2 premierships.
With that said, I've got Fremantle just outside that group of 5 teams, because those 5 teams have midfield strength, forward targets and damaging rebound attacks. That's what sets them above the competition. And if you look through any of those 5 teams' midfields, you see they're basically premiership winning midfields, every single one of them. And when you combine them with strong key forwards, strong forward targets, as well as a strong rebound, they're damaging as far as attacking goes.
I think all those teams, maybe bar Hawthorn, have a really solid defence.
Yes, as far as defence goes, Hawthorn's is probably the worst of those 5, but their rebound.
But you could also balance it out that their attack is maybe better than...
Well, as Carlton showed last night, if you win the majority of clearances and you get the first bite at the cherry, you're going to win more games than you lose.
And just on that as well, I think the biggest improvement in Carlton's game has been the defensive setup in the forward half. Last night, I think Collingwood really had trouble getting the ball out of our forward line and just bombing it, hoping it would fall into the arms of a Collingwood player. And Carlton were, I think, really well placed, and the setup in the forward line was awesome.
I think what I'd like to know with that is, was that... because I think it was Buckley's game plan, because they usually do go around the boundary. But the thing was that, do you think it was personal players' initiative that they were just getting frustrated because they found themselves 4 or 5 goals down before they could even blink Collingwood?
Oh, look, they're probably not used to being in that situation, so they probably would have thought, okay, well, we've been in losing situations twice in 3 weeks. We're not used to this. We've just gone through a season where we only lost to 1 team. A lot of players, they're not mentally prepared for that.
Well, that's fair enough, but it just makes you think, because they just didn't have structure last night, Collingwood. And the thing what Carlton did brilliantly is, because during the Brisbane match you saw Judd and Murphy run forward, because they really good forward running types, they can go on the offence. But what happened was, it was the work of Carazzo, the work of Simpson, the work of Tui to push back into space, and that Collingwood just shut down after that happened.
It really doesn't help that Collingwood have those list of injuries. But yes, Carlton did that magnificently last night, and that's part of the reason why they won.
I'm willing to give Carlton a 6-7 goal win, because when you lose Ball and Reid in the first quarter, it doesn't really help. And they were maimed from the offset, but they were still horrible, Collingwood.
We're veering slightly off topic here. I'll just steer the ship back on. So we've got the first 5 teams, and then we've got Fremantle. From then on, there's a massive pool of teams that could jump up to claim one of the 2 remaining spots in the finals. I've split this group up into 2 sections, likely and outside chance. The teams in the likely group are Adelaide, North Melbourne and St Kilda. Each side, much like the top 5, has a strong forward line and tough midfield. However, they all seem to be lacking that extra number in the back line that makes them a powerful team.
I'd sort of bring Essendon into that mix. I think they're particularly in the place of probably North Melbourne, possibly even St Kilda.
I think, with this likely and outside chance group, did you put draw into that, or was that just basically on what?
No, it was basically everything. Had a look at their fixture, had a look at the way they're travelling at the moment, had a look at injury lists, all that sort of stuff. And it's just, those are the three teams that stand out to be looking to claim that extra spot.
I mean, the Saints, with them, I just... again, it's this... Their top six is just up there with the best, but their bottom six, it just drops off ridiculously, and that's why I struggle to put them in the finals, why I'm, second-guessing saying they'll be there in September.
It doesn't help that they've come off a relatively poor season last year, but you've got to look at it as a fresh new start. They've actually started quite well. They're in a situation where they could shock a few people. They didn't have a good round first up against Port Adelaide, which was a bit of a letdown for most people, especially tipping-wise. But look, Lenny Hayes back helps a lot. It really bolsters their midfield. They've got a chance to be up there.
What is it about North that puts them in the likely group? Would it be more fixture?
Not only the fixture, but I like the way that the midfield's starting to come together. Zeebel's back in this week. This ruck is developing, the ruck department. They've always had a relatively good midfield. Swallows come of age. The forward line with Petrie emerging is really good. They need to start being a bit more accurate in forward. Cough, cough, Lindsay Thomas. But, they'll be up there this year. They're usually up and about, and they've started well. They've got an alright draw. They'll be up there.
So, because you brought the draw into consideration, does that mean the Crows? Now, why have you rated the Crows in this group?
Simply because they're a good team. You look at them on paper, they're a good team. You look at them go out and do it, they're a good team. They haven't lost this year. They're in good form. They're in a good headspace at the moment. Just see them being up there this year.
I mean, Dangerfield will emerge. Rory Sloane will emerge. I mean, Yench, I reckon, is going to go to the next step. I mean, there's a lot of these... And this is the thing what I hate about watching about Adelaide, because there's all these, 6 foot... blonde blokes, midfielders, and they all look the bloody same. I can't tell the difference. You've got Van Berlo, well, he's shaved his head now, but you've got Vince, you've got Scott Thompson, and it's a really solid midfield when you break it down. Once Vince and Van Berlo start playing back to the potential they were playing in 2008, 2009, they're a strong team, and I think they're a good chance to make finals too.
And Sam Jacobs has flourished as a ruckman as well. He goes very underrated in the ruck. He's quite a good ruckman.
I mean, even in the forward line, you got Tex Walker.
The forward line is the probably most damaging part of their side as well, and they've got a very strong midfield, so that's what it says a lot about their forward line.
Who's the other bloke? Walker.
Walker.
Tippett.
You got Tippett, and now you've got Porplesia back.
Oh, the Porps as well. Porpoise. I mean, that's a really dangerous full forward line if you're sticking them all one out.
That's it. And they're all leading targets as well. They don't just ask for the ball to be put on their head. They're all damaging. So, okay, that's the teams I've got in the likely group. The outside chance group is a little bit more open. In the group, I've got Brisbane, Essendon, Port Adelaide, Richmond, Sydney, and the Western Bulldogs. Despite their ladder position, each team has shown enough in the first two rounds to suggest they could jump up and claim a position in the top 8. However, significant improvement in key areas is required to have any impact during finals.
Well, the thing that hampers some of the parts of this outside chance group is definitely injuries. I'd say Brisbane and Essendon first up have been hit pretty hard. I mean, Praylab, you'd know full extent. What is it? Hill, Lovett, Murray already gone?
Hill, Lovett, Murray, Myers, McVeigh out with soreness. I think we're down to about 28 available players at the moment, but you'd expect to get them back by the end of the year.
So. And this is the sort of stuff that I looked at when compiling this list, is injuries at the moment and how detrimental they are to the overall structure of the team. Losing those names for Essendon are big.
So you'd say that is why they're not in the likely group at the moment?
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's a good point. You could say the same about Brisbane. I mean, Jonathan Brown's missing. Staker's not playing. He'd be a key post in defence. And the thing is, because he's not a key post in defence, they have to push Merritt back, and they haven't really got a target up forward.
Brisbane basically define the meaning of outside chance this year. They're very unpredictable. They got slaughtered in round 2, which wasn't good, but they had a very good round 1. I think they'll take a few by surprise.
Well, this is the thing. I know Brisbane have a really good forward combo that they could use, and it's just these kids haven't shown anything yet. You'd think that... I saw them last year. They played about 13, 14 games in Aaron Cornelius and Patrick Karnezis. They played about 14-odd games. They showed some all right things. They kicked probably 15 goals each. And during the pre-season, they didn't really show anything, and they haven't played in the first 2 games this year. I don't think they're selected for the game against Freo today. So, they've got really 2 exciting prospects raring and waiting to go, and they haven't really shown anything.
Look, it'll come. They're still young. They've still got a lot of developing to do. It doesn't help that you're developing in a side that isn't quite up there and hasn't been up there for a few years now, but they'll come through. It happens. Now, the final three teams that I've got to round out the ladder is Gold Coast, Greater Western Sydney, no surprises there. But I've also slotted Melbourne in the same category as them. And it's harsh to have Melbourne in the same category as two new sides with undeveloped lists. But when you look at it very closely, Melbourne's list is very similar to that of the Suns and Giants, in that the team is held up by youngsters rather than depending on experienced heads. Now, this isn't to say Melbourne will finish in the bottom 4 or 3 or whatever, but it suggests that they're not up to competing with the stronger teams on a regular basis.
I mean, Melbourne, the thing is, it's not that there's no class, it's just that there's a top 6 and there's a solid top 6 that will be really, really good footballers, in fact, probably A-grade footballers. Then it falls away. Senior players aren't standing up. Neeld, Ethan, you watch him more than I do. Is this the game plan, this long around the boundary to contest what Neil did at Collingwood? Is this the way to go?
Well, I think they've just got to get used to it. I mean, you had Geelong last year winning the grand final with the first-year coach. I think having an inexperienced coach, with Buckley as well backing on the Collingwood, isn't really an issue in itself. But I think they've just got to get used to the game plan, because with Bailey, they had an aggressive game plan going through the middle, but it doubled back on them. The other teams rebounded through the middle even quicker and got scored heavily against, put a lot of pressure on Frawley, Garland in the back line. I think they've just got to get used to the game plan.
I think even with Geelong, what they do have is a lot of on-field leaders, which is what Melbourne is lacking. They simply don't have anyone out there in the middle who's willing to step up and actually perform and lead their teammates by example.
I mean, speaking of on-field leaders, Jimmy Bartel, if you watch him in the last quarter against the Hawks on Monday, he really did what he liked, and I think that's a message that Chris Scott sends to him. You can actually, it's up to you. You evaluate the play. You figure out where you want to stand. And if you're watching those crucial moments when the ball was bombed into Hawthorn's 50, he was the one on the goal line.
He put himself at full back.
He did,
for the last 10 minutes. That was fantastic.
Jimmy Bartel, and if you go back over some crucial games in the last couple of years, he hasn't really had a role, and he gets off players and has, either just gone forward or gone back or just gone whenever he's needed.
Look, it's a big call. We rant and rave about how good Jimmy Bartel is. He's a Brownlow winner and all that sort of stuff, but he's still underrated. He still doesn't get enough credit for the work that he does. As far as leadership goes, he is just above and beyond. As far as skill goes, he's above and beyond. He's versatile. He's a leader. He's the kind of guy that you'd select first in your team to shape the rest of the team around.
To be honest, everyone goes, okay, he's Selwood, he's the captain. I know it's splitting hairs, but I rate Bartel higher than Selwood.
Bartel's their best player.
Just for the fact that when the game's in the balance, it's an important game, he goes, okay, this is what I got to do, and he's cool and he's calm and he does it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting discussion right there. Now, what I'm going to discuss right now is what the AFL needs to do to ensure spot fixing does not hit the AFL. So first of all, what is spot fixing? Spot fixing basically is different to match fixing. Match fixing involves, for example, if Carlton were playing Richmond, if you could bet on whether Carlton would win that game, which will probably happen anyway. But if Richmond were to win it and you paid all the players out there to lose it, that would be match fixing, which is something which is very difficult to coordinate and unlikely to ever hit the AFL. But what spot fixing is for example, if you had Jack Revolt, his first scoring shot, to either kick a goal or kick it behind, and you paid him to kick a goal, and that's what spot fixing is. And what I'm going to discuss is whether there is a potential for that to hit the AFL. So where spot fixing is mainly come to its head is cricket, and we've heard a lot about that recently. We've seen a lot of Pakistani cricketers, mainly Amir Butt and Asif, who've basically been banned for 5 to 10 years for deliberately bowling no balls and being engaged in spot fixing, and they've also recently been jailed in England. More recently, we've seen cricket county players, Westhoff and a few others, also been, suggested that they have been implicated in spot fixing. But there's two main differences between the AFL and cricket. First of all, there's legal regulated betting within Australia, which is something that is massive. In the subcontinent, betting is basically illegal, so there's a lot of underground black markets. And second of all, player wages are actually quite good within the AFL. I think the average salary is about $55,000 and rookies get paid a significant amount. And that's compared to countries such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, a lot of these poorer nations where these players simply are getting paid peanuts and it's really lucrative for them to actually be involved in this type of behaviour. But that doesn't mean it can't happen, because in Australia, in the rugby league, Ryan Tandy was probably the most recent case involved in a similar situation. And he allegedly deliberately considered a knock-on, and basically he was charged under trying to obtain financial advantage by deception and given a 12-year good behaviour bond. This is something he is appealing, so it's still going through the court system. But if he is eventually found guilty, he'll potentially be banned for life permanently to playing rugby league. But now let's move on to AFL, because there have been a few betting scandals and a few issues, probably not directly related to spot fixing, but something that suggests that the integrity of the sport could be to question. So we saw Heath Shaw, who was suspended for 8 matches and fined $20,000. Maxwell was basically fined $5,000 and another $5,000 suspended. But most recently, Dean Wallace, who's a coach at the Essendon Football Club, in fact coaches from the boundary line, was found to be betting on his own team and lied about it to the AFL and authorities and was suspended for 14 weeks. There's also been more issues at VFL level with regards to goal kicking, and that's probably where it's more likely to occur. But I will make it clear, none of these people were actually spot fixing. They're simply out there betting on their own sports. But I think there's a one-step process involved where if you are betting on your own sport, potentially there is some issues regarding spot fixing. Now, the question is, were these punishments enough? And my view is that the AFL was simply too weak with regards to his punishment. Heath Shaw was back for the finals. Dean Wallace, someone who betted on his own team, the one he's actually coaching, was given 14 weeks off instead of being suspended for about a year like other AFL officials were. What are your thoughts on the actual suspensions?
Well, I think, with Wallace, I agree with you. I think someone who is in control, of his own sphere, who can say, you can push up a bit forward and you can do this and that, he got off too weak. I think Maxwell, he's a captain. He has a responsibility to not engage in that sort of behaviour and set, a sort of standard of moral principle because he's the captain. Just not on, too weak. Heath Shaw, I reckon that was spot on. He's not a captain. He's not necessarily in the leadership group. He's a senior player, but I wouldn't say he's in the leadership group, so that's about spot on. But there's also, did you know that there's 10 officials right now being investigated by the AFL? They haven't designated what club they're from, or if they're from a club, or whether they're from the AFL that they're doing this. But there are 10 people currently under investigation. And the thing is, within within a week of Wallace putting on the bets, we knew he did it and he was punished. This is being investigated since December. Do you think that this is a part of the changes that you say that we should automatically, the week after that they learn this, that they're punished? Because we can't continue having this where, they can get off by... We set an example in which we don't, put them on the spot automatically and say, this is the wrong thing. We've already done it, and the thing is the AFL aren't following up with that standard that they've set, and it's not, a good look.
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure there's a thorough investigation. I think the Dean Wallace thing did take a while to actually implement. But what's really important is having clear-cut penalties in place. I mean, we look at Heath Shaw, and I think you said it was an okay suspension. The way I see it, he was suspended but fined to play finals. And to me, that's the sort of message it sends, that even if you do something wrong, you'll still be back in time to play the most important games in the actual AFL. We go back to cricket, and cricket, the main issue that started with cricket was years and years ago with a lot of Pakistani players like Akram and some of the even high-profile ones were involved in some form of match-fixing/spot fixing, and all of them were let off. We see from Australia, Mark Waugh, Shane Warne, both gave information to bookies. Both were given warnings and given suspended fines. And that's the sort of precedent set, which right now cricket's in a crisis, where practically every close game, the first thought that jumps to people's mind is, was the match fixed? Was there spot fixing involved? And that's not the situation you want within the AFL. So, from my point of view, I think the AFL is being quite weak, and what they need is three clear guidelines. First of all, what they need is harsh penalties designed to deter, and that's automatic suspensions. If you bet on the sport, you get a 1-year suspension. There's no ifs, no buts, no mitigating circumstances. Make it clear to every player, if you bet, you get a year off. If you're a coach, you get 2 years. Whatever the case is, whatever the penalties actually are, you always have clear-cut penalties which don't have all these mitigating circumstances, so you have different results and different suspensions for different players. But I think the second thing is you need legislation, which is currently being, I think, pushed through Parliament, looking at sports specifically, quite similar to England, where I think Amir and all these other players were basically found guilty in jail, but criminal penalties in place for people engaged in this type of behaviour, which I guess sends a second level of deterrent. And thirdly, you need the regulation of the markets, and that's, I think, which the AFL is currently looking into. So you can't have situations where Sportsbet and the other betting agency want to create a market, for example, where whether Franklin's first scoring shot will be a point or a goal, because that's where the potential is there. Where you've got situations where it's not going to affect the outcome of the match, it's a small minor point in the actual overall scheme of the entire match. That's where the potential rises, where there's a lot of money involved, and potentially the players can be involved. Not that I'm suggesting at all that any of the players will do that. So I think it's a three-step process. First of all, clear-cut penalties with no mitigating circumstances with minimum terms in play. Secondly, having criminal legislation in place to deter these players. And thirdly, also making sure that the actual betting markets are particularly regulated.
I think with removing the betting markets, the thing with that is it actually it sort of penalises the betting public as well. The way I see it, it's not really... I think it's pretty much a soft way out for the AFL. I think the penalties are the way to go.
Yeah, I think to some extent you do need to regulate some of the markets. So having things like the first goal kicker is quite important, but making sure that there's not where you can't bet on each individual scoring play or looking at the minute and that sort of thing. I think that needs to be looked at.
I don't think you can be any more clear cut with it. Just say if you bet on the AFL at all, you're in trouble, and you go on and make it harsh punishment. Don't give them a few weeks out of the game to think about what they've done. Say, no, you're not playing football for a year. You're not playing football for 2 years. Look, we're going to move on. We're going to have a few messages from Sin.
Didn't get much sleep last night. Listen to the hoist, I'm feeling alright. Freight train full of local CDs, full track albums and rad EPs.
The Hoist, giving local music a lift. Weekdays from 7 till 8 p.m. Only on Sin.
EPs.
Shut up, Bo.
Okay.
If you want to catch the best rock of this generation, tune in to the Tim Tam and Forkman Show. The Tim Tam and Forkman Show, where you will find the best rock of this generation.
You're listening to Sin.
Experts say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
And they wear lab coats, so I trust them.
So why not start it with a bowl of Sin's Get cereal?
With our fibersome hosts, crunchy comedy,
vitamin-rich interviews,
packed especially with vitamins C, L, and M. It's Charles, Luke, and Millie.
That's too far.
Sin's Get cereal with Charles, Luke, and Millie. 6 to 9 weekdays.
Act 1. Darkness. Silence. Dim light up on the square. In the spotlight stands Alan Strang, a lean boy of 17, in sweater and jeans. In front of him, the horse Nugget.
Wow, what are you reading from?
Oh, this is Equus by Peter Shaffer. It's such a great play. Listen to this bit. The flame of a cigarette lighter jumps in the dark.
Oh, that's very powerful, but maybe you should save the rest for our new segment.
Oh, right. Almost forgot about that. Hi everyone, I'm Prithvi.
And I'm Florence. If you're passionate about theatre, like Prithvi and I, then check out our new segment called Auditorium during Artsmitten on Sundays from 3 to 4 p.m, where we'll be putting on our favourite selection of classic and modern plays.
And most importantly, we want to unearth new writers on our show. So if you've written a play, monologue or skit that you want to get on air, then please send us your piece to auditorium.sin@gmail.com, and that's spelled auditorium.sin@gmail.com. Submissions for the first play reading close on the 31st of July, so send us your work by then.
Welcome back for Bound for Glory. We've actually got a special guest on the line. He's an ex-AFL player turned AFL umpire and my personal man crush, Jordan Bannister. Thanks for joining us, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Going from an AFL player to an AFL umpire, it's not something you really hear of every day. What sparked your interest in umpiring?
I guess in my last couple of years at Carlton, I had about 4 operations and I got suspended a couple of times. I just really needed to do something else. So I spoke with Jeff Deaton a few times and, just umpiring was a new challenge that, seemed to interest me.
I mean, one of those challenges, you've mentioned in interviews before that you've almost gotten sucked into the play and jumped in.
Yeah, no, we definitely get a lot closer to the ball, and you really got to kind of keep your distance away from it. And then just from a football background, you're kind of drawn into the play to kind of win the ball. So that was a bit hard to get used to for sure.
Do you think the AFL will begin to employ full-time umpires in the near future?
Look, the current AFL umpires probably put as much work in as they could if they were working full time. The guys train every day. They constantly have watch games at night. So I don't think their output would change too much. But I think it's definitely a possibility in the next few years that a couple will probably trial it.
Do you think you feel that you have a heightened understanding for the player's opinion when you make calls on the field?
Well, I hope so. I think with defenders and taggers, because I used to play in those positions, you can kind of understand what the player's intent is. But in saying that, there's so much I've had to learn that a player wouldn't know, positioning and just having the experience of what a push in the back is on a real hard lead, where I probably haven't seen that from a distance before.
Would you agree that the actual job you have is probably officiating? That officiating a game of AFL is harder than officiating another sport? Do you think that the pace of it is something that throws some people off?
Yeah, mate, I reckon it's one of the hardest sports to officiate in the world. I've watched, obviously Premier League, basketball, and a lot of them don't involve a lot of running or don't involve, they got offside, so they're not a 360-degree game where an umpire has to look over his back and everything. So, we run up to 16 kilometres a game, and it's one of the hardest jobs I've ever done for sure.
Do you ever chat with the other players out on the field, because you'd know some of them from your playing days? Would you think that knowing them makes it easier?
I umpired Sam Jacobs last week, who was one of my really good mates at Carlton, and he was giving me a bit of banter out on the field the whole time and trying to make me laugh. So I obviously can't say anything back to him because he's a professional out there, but he kept telling me I look skinny and I've lost a lot of weight, and so I wanted to have a crack back at him, but I couldn't till after the game.
Yeah, you don't have much room for back chat, do you?
No, exactly. He's a big redhead. He's a pretty easy target, but I couldn't really say anything.
So, has this always been an interest that's been there? Was it always something that you like along the way as the studio falls apart as we speak? I definitely had in my mind from early days when I found out, the AFL were looking for a player to take up umpiring. I know Mark Fraser did it over 10 years ago, but Simon Wiggins used to play at Carlton, brought up the idea to me years ago, and I kind of never thought it would happen because it was, such an extreme difference from playing. But as I got to learn about it more, it just became more interesting to me. Have the other umpires, taken an interest in you as in, this is someone who's played the game? Have they ever asked, of your perspective of it?
Yeah, it goes a bit of both ways. I always ask them questions about, what players have had some, funny banter with on the field, and they ask me the same things, like what do players, think of this decision, what is this? But so Matt Stevick and Brett Rosebery in particular have, been helping me a lot. And I'm actually in Perth at the moment with Brett Rosebery. He reckons he's over here babysitting me for the Fremantle-Brisbane game.
We hear about AFL teams and players becoming really close and bonding with each other. Is it the same for the group of umpires?
Mate, that's what I probably didn't expect. I didn't know what kind of guys they were and didn't know, how I'd fit in, but it really is just like a football club, the same kind of, banter. The guys go out together, they, have a drink together. So it's a very similar group to that. They're probably just a little bit older guys. Like, most guys on an AFL list are, teenagers and low 20s, whereas these guys have all got, families and kids, and, so it's just a different age bracket.
So what was running through your head before you officiated the North Melbourne Essendon game?
It wasn't too bad leading up to it. I was pretty relaxed because, obviously I've played in that kind of situation before, but then once I got out on the ground for, leading up to, your first bounce and things like that, I started to nerve up quite a bit, but, and the crowd were pretty vocal towards me. I think the Essendon supporters turned on me pretty quickly. But yeah, no, it was a good experience, mate, and I was definitely a lot less nervous last week in Adelaide.
So, even both games sort of got, tense points. Do umpires, when the margin is small, are the umpires aware of that, or do they just continue officiating as they would a regular?
Yeah, you definitely just continue officiating as you would no matter what, because, most times when you make a bad call is when your concentration slips, when, a team could be 80 points up or something. So you try not to look at the big screen and but in saying that, you are human, so you do have a look at the footy score every now and then. But, but you try to just, keep it the same positioning and things like that.
All right, Jordan, it's been an absolute honour. Thanks for being on the show.
Mate, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, boys.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Jordan Bannister there.
It's really interesting to go from being an AFL player to an umpire, especially in such shorter time. So his first 2 games have been quite good from what I've seen. He's umpiring Fremantle Brisbane later this afternoon.
Yeah, which we'll preview.
Yes, we will preview it soon. But I think now we've got a few SYN messages to get to.
Bad Wolf, 4 p.m. Sundays on SYN.
Naruto.
So believe it!
Bleach. Behold my Bankai. Sailor Moon.
Moon Tiara Magic!
Pokemon.
Now, Quick Attack!
Just some of the epic anime featured on SYN's new show, Anime Ball Z.
Tune in Tuesdays at 9 a.m. for all your anime needs.
Character breakdowns, plot holes, trivia, and giveaways.
All for anime lovers of any level.
So join Bo and Criddle for Season 3 on Anime Ball Z.
Hey, I'm Joseph.
Hi, I'm Marita.
Tune in to Blind Insight every Monday from 3:30 to 4:30. Blind Insight rocks topics, rocks news, rocks music. Blind Insight on SYN.
And we're back after the absolute idiocy that goes on in the ad breaks here at Bound for Glory. And we're back with one of our friends, the Sarge. How are you?
How are you, mate?
Officially known as the Sarge. You don't have a first and second name. It's just the Sarge.
He's like Prince.
I'm like the Madonna of Supercoach.
It's Sarge. What is it exactly you do?
Well, I just give tips around Twitter. I've got new newsletters coming out. Yeah, I just just ask people, give them opinions.
He's our Supercoach expert, and how did you start doing this? Because I know you personally. You're a busy motherfucker.
I'm not. Honestly, I've got so much time. We can beat that out.
We can say that. You guys do know we have $5 each we can use.
You just used 2. All right, anyway,
I'm down to 3. I explained this to you all explicitly before we began, that you can say fuck 5
Welcome
times.
to the show,
I'm down
Sarge.
to 3.
How are you?
Well, good show, guys. Good show.
Classy dialogue.
We got a badass over here.
So how did you come up with the Sarge?
Well, I started off as the username Supercoach Tips, and I thought that sounded gay, right?
I'm sure we can't say that either.
So then this guy goes, wait, Sergeant Supercoach sounds way better, right? So then I'm like, yeah, that's very catchy because 2 S's. Why not?
It seems like a good idea. How much commitment goes into doing what you do as the Sarge?
Not much, to be honest. I actually put university first then. But if I get bored of the lectures, just pop on the MacBook, just type a few things.
Which is, if you look at his Twitter, which is every 5 minutes in a lecture. No, I'm doing my Supercoach work. So you have a very wide and diverse look at Supercoach. So you'd be able to tell us which players that are Supercoach friendly rather than being Dream Team friendly.
You got your sucklings. Kicking efficiency is key. So if you got Bachar Houli, if he performs, he's a good 120 points.
Anyone else?
Well, Carazzo's a surprise because people would not pick him as a premium. But this year, his kicking efficiency and handballs have been off the charts. I mean, last night he killed it.
So, it's a cardinal sin in fantasy footy with sideways trading. Do you think it's okay to sideways trade rookies early on if you don't think you haven't selected the right ones?
I don't think so. I mean, if there's a Magner, like a Magner out there, you need that player. You need that cash cow. But for premiums, it is a cardinal sin, really, because you've chosen them for a reason. You've got to have faith, back your research. Yeah.
I mean, even you've mentioned Magner there. What about Green? Because some of us have jumped on Kennedy. Some of us have jumped on Bug. They've done okay. Bug's moved on to a tagging role. He's obviously not going to make much more points. Do you think that it would be okay in this sort of to say, oh, my Bug's not going to score. Do you think I should jump on Green? Sorry.
No, absolutely. Even I did that. 2 days ago, I was thinking, Coniglio or Green. Green is going to get a good 80,000 after this week. So jump on him, upgrade him later, in probably 6 rounds, and you'll be right.
So early trades before price rises. How important is this to correct your team? This is obviously something that's already happened. Have you done any, and is there any future rookies to look out for as a potential downgrade?
Oh, yeah. You've got to make 2 trades this week. Got it. Well, it's a bit late now because it's Saturday, but you've got to. You've got Magner, you've got Green, you've got Kennedy. If you pick Kennedy before round 1, you are one lucky man.
Yeah. I had him on the field. I'm one of those people that can call it last minute.
I'm pretty sure I tweeted that to you, mate.
You did not tweet that to me. I'll tell you what happened. I was sitting at Sin, and I saw one of our producers here, Damon, had him on the team, but he had him on the bench. And I'm like, no, he's playing in the halfback flank. Ball's going to be up there all night, and he's going to score.
I thought we agreed we weren't going to mention that.
No, we're going to mention that, and quite publicly we're going to mention that. So, with your ruck structure, I mean, I went with a premium 3 rookie setup, which can, be slightly risky, but it looks to be paying off early on. Should we stick with that, or did you roll with something else?
No, I rolled with that. I think everyone else did, I guess. They've always got a Mumford or a Cox as a primo, but if you need Giles, Redden, and Stevenson as your free rooks, that is just set. There's no one else that you can get. But I think the most effective that you can go after 2 rounds is the mid prices. You've got Ryder and Cruiser. If you had them 2 as your 2 rucks, then you are one happy man.
Is there any rucks you'd stay away from?
Sandilands. Sandilands is way too much for a person that's got an injury history.
Even McIntosh and Goldstein, they've practically done nothing.
Goldstein has really been effective. We predicted that in preseason, but we weren't too sure. But now, as we've seen these 2 matches, even against GWS, you'd think he'll dominate. But he didn't. He only got 50 or so points. It's not good enough for a 600,000 player.
So here, basically, dual position players are going to help, and they're going to come into account, at the end of the season. With the mid-season buys in mind, was the need to have, dual position players something you concentrated on when you picked your initial squad? Is that how you've chosen to approach the buys, or are you just going to take it 1 week at a time?
I do take 1 week at a time. In the preseason, I didn't have that many DPPs in my side. I just thought, who's the best player for each position, and I'll work on later on.
So, okay, we're going to just run through a list of just some players. I'm just going to go through them. Malera.
Risky. Very risky. Hasn't played against very good opposition. You've got Graham and Schneider coming back in, so I don't think you should go in bandwagon just yet.
Carazzo.
Oh.
Italian for turnover.
Italian for turnover. Better options, actually. You've got good options if you need a DPP, such as Birchall. Oh, not Birchall, but Birchall as a good premium instead of Carazzo. But if you need a DPP instead of Carazzo, you pick someone else. Really,
the Tomahawk.
Oh, after last week's match, a lot of people are actually jumping on his bandwagon, but I don't think he's that good of a player just yet. He looks a gem as a footballer, not as a Supercoach player.
Stratton.
Not on my radar. Shouldn't be on anyone's radar, actually. It looks like a lockdown role with all those Hawthorn injuries, so get off him.
Do you think he's a chance if they got some of those players back?
No, not at all. Don't rate him.
Green from GWS.
Yeah, got him. He is the Barlow of 2012. You must have him in your side. If you don't have him, you're screwed.
Do we stick with Martin?
Yes, I have. I haven't traded him out yet because of who he's versed. Collingwood and Carlton, I think. So just Stay on him. He's a premium. You can't waste those trades.
I mean, Gaff Shuey, with all the injuries at West Coast,
Yeah.
Embley went down recently. They're going to get more game time and more through the midfield. Do you think they're two you could jump on?
Gaff maybe next year. As I think he's a third-year player, is that right? So there is a third-year player rule. Shuey is too expensive. You might as well going and spending a bit more for Stanton or Bartel.
Lake?
I did have an interview with him, and he did
Big
say,
shot.
Yeah, big names. He didn't say that he was 100% fit or close to it. Him and Hargrave are going to work in that back line really well. He's a bit inconsistent. I mean, everyone got off him after round 1, and then everyone went back onto him after round 2. So we got to see after round 3, see how he goes. His price isn't going to change much because of his inconsistency. Let's see how he goes and make a decision from there.
I mean, everyone expected also this is one Dangerfield in the off-season to just explode. He hasn't really done that just yet. Is he someone to stick with?
Yeah, absolutely. He's consistent. That's what you need in your Supercoach. From a 430,000 player, if you get 90 out of him every week, then that's all you can ask for.
I think this is the big trump card, the last player that we all want to know. Jack Watts.
Oh, probably the best number 1 draft pick in history.
Oh, just the best. Is he worth it at, what is it, 400? Who's 44 for Melbourne?
Rowan Bale.
Ouch.
You should probably explain Ethan has a number 44 jumper for Melbourne and is flaunting it. Anyway, continue.
No, I was pointing to the Energy Watch logo, actually. I probably missed it, though.
Energy who?
Energy Watch.
God, we run such a amateur
organisation.
organisation.
If you've seen the ad and the horrible wink acting performance he does, then you'll understand. But Jack Watts, what do you think of him?
Not on anyone's radar. Not on Melbourne Demons' radar.
He wouldn't be on Jack Watts' radar.
His mum doesn't want him.
All right, I think at this rate, since we've offended everyone, I think we're going to go to... Sorry?
I'm sorry, I just got a quick question. Who do you think is like the lock-in captain each week? Like the guarantee, like the player...
Gary Ablett. Must have Gary Ablett. And if depending on who St Kilda are versing, Brendan Goddard.
And I've got one more question. Greg Broughton, what do you do with him?
I've still got him.
Got him?
I'm no Ben has traded him out for Dempsey, which everyone else has. Everyone else has done. So it's gotten 200,000. But I don't think you should trade. I don't think you should trade him. He is one of those players that you need in your back line.
And
he'll come good.
On that note, I think Sarge, thanks for coming in.
No problem, mate.
Do I owe you a beer or something?
Yeah, you do, mate.
Oh,
Thanks.
Dear God. All right, we'll be back after these messages.
The Student Youth Network.
Hey, I'm Joseph.
Hi, I'm Marika.
Tune in to Blind Insight every Monday from 3:30 to 4:30. Blind Insight rocks topics, rocks news, rocks music. Blind Insight on SYN.
We're joined now by one of the special guests, one of our regulars, Warnie from Dream Team Talk. Welcome to the show, mate.
G'day guys, how are we going?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. So, we're 3 rounds into the season. How are your team going so far?
Well, I'm off to a bit of a shocker, actually. Ranked, just inside the top 50,000, which is something that the Warn Dogs have never ever seen before. So it might have been called a rebuilding year early on, but we already started off pretty well. So this weekend, big games last night from quite a few of my players and sort of unique players too. So hopefully I get a bit of a leg up on the competition this week.
And how are you going with, is it correct in saying that you had Mumford in your team? I don't know if you still got him.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have Mumford, and we're sort of lucky with that partial lockout last week that I was able to be around the computer so I could actually make the switch, because normally I don't put an emergency in the ruck, so I was able to switch Mumford onto the bench and then get Redden in for that week.
I mean, are you one of the boys who still has Broughton? Have you pulled the trigger yet?
No, this is my old school dream teaming coming out of me, that my rules of never trading a premium is definitely there, and I kept Broughton, and I've got Grimes and Shaw as well, and so I kept all 3, which is probably going against what most dream teamers would be doing at the moment.
Has Grimes' output satisfied you at this point in time?
Oh, certainly not, but he is underpriced, and his break-even isn't like ridiculously high or anything like that, and I think that he'll at least get that this week. And, you know, it's a slow start for the Demons, so hopefully for him, he might be able to lift up as the team does too.
I mean, sideways trading, yeah, it's always considered a cardinal sin. Do you think it's okay to trade the rookies that you didn't get on early on?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think that's what this week should have been all about, is actually maximising your cash and in return, I guess, points early on in the season. But it's about that. So if you missed a guy like James Magner, which I'm not sure too many people would have, but he was one of the most traded in this week. Guys like him, Green was another one on that a lot of people don't have. And if you had, someone that wasn't playing, or you used a little bit of a switcheroo to get him in, that was a good one for this week as well.
So, just on that, do you place much emphasis on correcting your team early on in the season before the price rises come into effect?
Yeah, I do if I have stuffed something up. But at the moment, although I'm ranked in the 49,000s, I didn't do any trades this week. I'm quite happy with all my rookies. The only one probably that was a slight worry was Dixon. I've got him in the forward line and he was dropped. I could have got on Malera or another forward rookie that I didn't have, but I feel that there's a couple coming through shortly that I might be able to get better from. For example, Adam Treloar makes his debut this week for the Giants, so yeah, get excited about him.
And are there any other future rookies to look out for as potential downgrades for when the rookies in your side have maxed out in price? For example, like Couch?
I think Couch he's a really interesting one. He was named as an emergency in the first week, but then he hasn't been on the emergency list in the last two. And with what the Demons have been doing and their big changes, he still hasn't been cited. So he'll be an interesting one to see. I think there's quite a few that'll be on the radar that we'll see popping up through, especially some of the mature age picks that we haven't seen as yet. Spur might come through for the Dockers at some stage, and there's quite a few that we'll be able to see. And I reckon the Giants will also have a few up their sleeve for us too.
With the bye, obviously, going to come up later in the season, has this shaped the way you've put your team together initially?
Yeah, it has. I definitely had that in mind. I'm trying not to have more than three in any position on the same bye. But, there's so much that can happen between now and the byes that I didn't stress too hard on that and still wanted to try to get the best team that I could.
Now, I just wanted to talk about ruck structures. It's always a big topic coming into the season. Personally, I went with the premium and rookie setup, which can be slightly risky. But what structure did you roll with coming into the season? And now at round 3, which do you think will be the most successful combo come the end of the season?
Well, I've done the same. I've gone with the rookie, and that's looking good at the moment because Giles is showing a fair bit. I guess I was a bit unlucky last week with Mumford. But, your premium and your rookie and your rookies there, I think that's going to work all right. Time will tell with this week, I guess, with Brogan being back in for the Giants and see what Giles' output might be. But I think that's going to sit all right for us. The buys are going to be quite interesting with that because what's Big O going to look like, even Redden too when Renouf's back, and also Lobie. But I think really, if you were going to say something, I'd nearly say the mid-pricer and the rookie strategy might have been the winner at this stage if you jumped on Cruiser, for example. I think he's been really good, or even if you went two mid-prices in getting Ryder as well, because they both started off quite well.
We saw you boys, and just a little bit off topic, we saw you boys on the 6 o'clock news down in Tassie. How'd that happen?
I guess one of the reporters sort of knew about us and what we've been up to, and so he thought, this is a good little thing to fill up the boring Tassie news with. So, so they come around and had a chat to us for an hour, and it was pretty exciting. So quite a few people saw it and gave us, handed out a few autographs after that. So it's good fun.
Is the show any closer to going on television? Please give it something.
It may have a little bit of movement this week, but we probably won't know for a couple of weeks at least. But there has been a few more talks, which is pretty exciting for us. So can't get too excited yet because we've been there before. But there's still a big possibility of it happening.
Warnie, mate, all the best. We can't wait to see if it's coming. Thanks for your time, mate. Always a pleasure, always welcome.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your footy this weekend.
Cheers, mate.
Bringing you nothing but the best sounds from R&B to independent, underground to mainstream, international to our very own homegrown. We've got the lowdown on the latest events, artists, interviews and reviews, freestyle and battle competitions with giveaways each week, featuring none other than Strictly Oz, bigger than hip hop. hip-hop's finest. Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, 90.7 on Sin. Hip-hop's finest.
Yeah, well, wicked.
Sin, sin, sin.
Experts say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
And they wear lab coats, so I trust them.
So why not start it with a bowl of Sin's Get cereal?
With our fibersome hosts, crunchy comedy,
vitamin-rich interviews,
packed especially with vitamins C, L, and M. That's Charles, Luke, and Millie.
That's too far.
Sin's Get cereal with Charles, Luke, and Millie. 6 to 9 weekdays.
And we're back, bound for glory, and, well, basically, I think it's time for our favourite segment, CSI AFL. I think, Damon, just give us some of them dulcet tones, please.
Oh, the way.
God.
Beautiful. Back by popular demand.
Oh, my God. Anyway, I think we should get on with it, shouldn't we?
I'll kick it off. Okay, this is one I actually thought up in the shower of all places. That's where you do your most inventive thinking. Well, here we go. In the best voice, Vossiu tried playing Daniel Merritt up forward during patches in last week's thrashing. It didn't really pay off, but I can see how it had merit.
That might actually be the best of them this week, too, which is unfortunate.
We've set the bar extremely low and we can only go lower. All right. Heath Shaw signed a 3-year deal to stick with the Pies. Word is he never intended on leaving, so I guess you could say his signing was a sure thing.
They're not good. They're horrible. They're horrible. Alrighty.
Why do we stick with this?
We had a few Melbourne-themed ones here. It's obvious to the eye that Melbourne are in a bit of trouble. Gary Lyon was going to come out and say that their future is bright, but we all know he'd be lying. So beautiful.
I think I'm about to read the worst one of the lot, which is unfortunately mine.
There's one worse than what we had. What?
Okay. Former D's captain comes out and defends his club after his shit performance. I tell you what, the future is not green.
I should fire you for that.
I'll buck the trend and come up with a joke. I hear the AFL's a bit like the jungle. You've got the Brisbane Lions, the Richmond Tigers, and the Carlton Cheetahs.
That was pretty funny. I like that one.
Yeah, look, it's
just dead silence in the studio, and that may have been the best one of the lot.
There you go.
If you're at home just laughing at these, you need help.
Right, I think
we have a sense of humour.
I think we've got another Melbourne-based one, so I think it'd be worth me reading that. What about Melbourne's performance against the Eagles on the weekend? Can he best be described as disgraceful?
Joe could be best described as disgraceful. Melbourne could be described as disgraceful. We got one
I think
more.
that was the point of the joke.
We got one more. I know we're all desperate to do the final one. But
should we just rock, paper, scissors it?
Alright, look, alright, I'll rock it. Alright, Greg Broughton started with the green vest, only to come on in the second half when Freo needed him most. It was about time he was brought on.
It's shocking. Absolutely.
You're all going to hell. This is a disgrace. I think we should move on and actually talk about something constructive, like let's see where the middle rung teams are just tracking at the moment. Ethan, you want to take us away?
Well, I had a look at I'd say around 2010 there were comparisons being made between the younger teams in the AFL. I'm going to exclude Fremantle from this argument because they are pushing for finals. They should have made it last year, and I reckon they'll make finals this year. But the other teams that are probably in the rung below, the younger teams, I did North, Essendon, Richmond and Melbourne. Richmond and Melbourne were probably regarded as the two teams probably going to fight it out up the upper half of the ladder from what I saw in general footy analysis. Richmond and Melbourne, they were around the bottom of the ladder for 2009-2010 in the Tom Scully Cup, I can dub it, with the Jordan McMahon infamous kick after the siren. Then we had North and Essendon that were a bit higher in the bottom 8. They were still getting good draft picks. They were being a bit more competitive, to use a Dean Bailey cliche, unfortunately. But but I think that's been reversed now. North and Essendon are now probably pushing for finals. Essendon made them last year, and they've both got some pretty exciting youth, like Jack Siebel, Andrew Swallow, 24 and 21 respectively, and that's the future of North's midfield for probably the next 10 years. They got Dyson Heppel, Joe Watson isn't old, Heath Hocking isn't too
Zaharakis.
old. Zaharakis. They got And Stanton isn't old either. They've got some good youth in there. And Richmond and Melbourne are down lower. Melbourne in a worse state than Richmond. They're probably regarded as probably a super team with immense talent that are now just lacking leadership and senior players. What do you guys think about the whole situation with the youth and how they were rated and how they are now?
Melbourne? Oh, jeez.
Well, have a crack at Melbourne first. Get that out of the way.
Where do you start? I think we've just had a crack at Melbourne for the last hour and a half.
And this is all this show does. Crack at Melbourne. Didn't we do this 2 weeks ago as well?
Go from the top. I think we've got Watts.
Scully.
Oh, I'm deflated even talking about it, and they're not even my team. Just think, I mean, you've got a lot of blokes. You got Pettit, you got Howe. They will be good footballers. Then you go a little deeper, and you'd be like, Blease was horrible last week. Again, just seeing Pettit didn't show much. He got dropped. Trengove, Grimes, they're the only few that stand up, and it just can't keep happening that they're the only few. Green's been dropped. Davey has just been put back in the side after being dropped. Where's Maloney at? Is he injured? Or?
He's injured at the moment.
Sylvia injured?
Sylvia's done his back, which is unfortunate because he dominates against Richmond most weeks.
So,
well, last time he had 5 goals and 20 odd possessions.
I think you'd love to play Richmond every week.
All right, well then what about Richmond then?
Oh, well, sorry, before you guys, what about Magna as well? I know he's mature age, but he's probably shown the most out of all the semi-young players. I think he's 23 or something?
He's 24, I think. I reckon Nathan Jones has been our most impressive player this year. He keeps racking up the footy. He does a lot with it. His disposal's getting better. He seems a lot quicker than he used to be. Really good fitness base, and he can kick goals as well. I reckon he's actually fairly underrated, as a Melbourne supporter would say. But moving on to Richmond, what do you guys think about them?
I'd say Titch Edwards hasn't shown what he promised. I'd say Trent Cotchin is going to be the elite player he promised to be. Martin, aside from being down last week, will come, into that midfield and provide a hardened edge. He obviously needs to work on his defensive game because Pendlebury last week just ran off him and ran right. Vickery, he hasn't shown much. And this is the thing, Vickery at the end of last year was taking marks, he was kicking goals. He was looking as if he was a target that Richmond could look to for the next 5 to 10 years, and he hasn't shown much. His pre-season was average. Jack Riewoldt, boys, what do you think of Jack Riewoldt? He's
a superstar, but he tries to play as a superstar. There are a lot of times I saw firsthand Carlton Richmond round 1. There was a lot of times where he's in a good situation to just jump up and take a mark or take a chest mark, take an easy one, and he goes up to the back of the pack and goes for that spectacular highlight. He needs to do what he does best, and that's mark, lead, and kick goals.
I think with Vickery, he's shown so much promise. He's a good mark, but his kicking lets him down, I think. What do you reckon, guys? Do you reckon he should go to Fossil's Academy of Reliable Kicking?
Fuck. You need a bit of fuck.
That does not count out of the 5.
That does not count. I've got about 2 left, and that does not count. I want them for the end. Basically, you'd look at King. Would King be there next year?
He's pretty old, isn't he, though?
He's pushing to, 26, 25?
Yeah, he's late 20s.
Yeah, he just doesn't look like a player who will consistently show up and play that role you need him to. I think they've got a better player in Nahas to do that, who will be a pretty good gun footballer.
He's pretty inconsistent, though, Nahas.
I reckon that'll come with age.
He'll get better. He was mature age, wasn't he? Nahas, he wasn't. He wasn't. Came from the VFL. He wasn't straight away. He was about 21 when he started. He's about 23 now. He will come good, but Richmond need to play more games where there's more at stake. He's not learning, a team can't learn when they're not playing high-stake games every week.
We've been saying for a few years now that Richmond will come of age, Richmond will start becoming a good team. They've got the young list, they'll become good. But with recent years, we haven't really had a reason to believe it. This year, they've started with 2 losses, but in those two losses, they've been competitive. They pushed the Magpies last week when they started to get back into the game. They pushed Carlton for the majority of the game. They're starting to look a lot better. They've still got a few structural issues and a few development issues, but it's all coming together.
And I think why they look better is because for the first time in years, they've played with confidence. Like, they'll take the game on Not in a sense that, we're rushed. Like, no, here's a better option presenting itself. It's a little risky, but I think it'll pay off, and it does pay off. Miller's at Richmond. Yeah, I still get confused. I'm sorry. He's still there. Fine. He's there. He scored 4 against the Pies last week. He's looking a good lead up. You'd say he fills that hole until they find, or Vickery stands up. They've matured faster. It's funny because they've matured slower than what people thought Essendon and North Melbourne would. And, you look at Essendon's list and, a lot of people throw criticism at their midfield, but their midfield's developed better than Melbourne's. It's developed better than Richmond, and it's about on par with North's. I think the only issues with North and maybe Essendon is Essendon have started to go in hard at the ball. Stanton's winning inside ball, so is Zaharakis. Watson would always win because he's an A-grade player, Watson, no doubt. And what do you guys think of... The only thing that I think hold both North and Essendon back is their defences. Where do you think that needs to improve?
In the defence?
Yeah.
I think with Essendon, there's still an over-reliance on Fletcher, which is something that, at the end of the day, he's still the one who's taking the kick-ins. He's the one who often is the player who's out there saving the game. And players like Pearce probably hasn't come on as well as he should have. He hasn't recaptured the form he had back in 2009. I rate Hooker quite highly. He's actually quite injured at the moment. But Carlisle, some of the younger players are getting out there, and Dempsey looks to be a good shutdown defender. But at the end of the day, Essendon still are leaking too many goals in defence, and they need less reliance on Fletcher to move forward.
Heppel does have I think he's one guy that looks as though he could be a very good prospect in the future. He's shown that, but I think that he really needs to work on his one-on-one work, because you can't just rely on being in space. He gets a lot of open possession. He gets a lot of time to think. What he needs to improve is while he's under pressure, while he's one-on-one against someone, while he's two-on-one with somebody. He's somebody that will need to step up in the next few years, especially when Fletcher bows out.
I mean, that's the criticism I make of Heppel, that he's an astronaut. The only place he gets his balls in space.
Tish.
I think that was funnier than CSI AFL.
Than any of the ones in the CSI AFL.
Exactly. On Fletcher, how many years has he got left? Do you think he can pull it off?
He said recently in the week when he was interviewed for his 350th game that he said he will get through this year fine. He's taking it a year at a time. He reckons he'll go around next year, but surely he can't keep going.
Yeah, he's actually been transitioning into a coaching position here at Essendon, so he's basically playing the role of on-field coach and also off-field, so I think he is going to be making the move into coaching within the next 2 years.
So moving on to North Melbourne, what do you guys think about them? I reckon they're in a similar position to Essendon. They're probably pushing for finals. I reckon they can make finals this year.
I think in the same aspect that Essendon have improved their inside play, North Melbourne have improved their outside play. They've got runners now. They've got McMillan. They've got Atley. They've got Harper. They've got blokes who want. They're playing a more game style in which it's handball orientated. Very Geelong 2007. It's we don't look as we're bombing the ball to a target on the wing and just relying on whoever's got the crumbs. We're running the ball through the middle. I've never seen North Melbourne run in waves the way they have the last 2 weeks. And it impresses me that the fact that we played most of the Essendon game horrendously, our kicking efficiency was down, it was a disgrace, but we still nearly almost stole it. And that, it wasn't, something that I liked, but it was good to see that we still put in an effort for maybe 5 minutes of a game and we can still nearly win it. That's a sign of improvement, whereas otherwise we would have just been blown out the water.
But is that merit to North, or is that criticism towards Essendon?
I think Essendon should have put us away. I think they had just way more of the ball. They had way more, and they looked better going inside 50. But on the other side of the coin, comparing that to other North Melbourne performances where they only play for 5 minutes against a side around them, that's a 60-point loss last year. They nearly stole that. With North, they've got defence issues. Frito's on his last legs. He's done great at the start of the year. He's been a great servant of the club. He's not elite. They're going to need someone to find that hole. Grimer's been injured. Lockie Hansen, we're all waiting. We're all sitting on our hands, as we usually do with Lockie.
Quite a while, actually.
Yeah, you're telling me. But he's got the hands, and he can mark. That's the thing. He can be that centre-half back. He was a AIS centre-half back, the best 22 that year. You'd say we need to work out the forward pocket structure because Yeah, Lindsay, he's great with his pressure. His tackling creates goal opportunities. I think he's created already this season something like 7 goals from his tackles, and he got sent off at halftime last week. So, whether we can get Campbell playing in form, whether we move Harvey to the forward pocket, it's just we need to work out who's there. We need Edwards to be more prominent in his leads, and I think we need to see the development of Aaron Black and Aiden Kennedy out of the twos, because they're two blokes who haven't... Black's played one senior game. He looked great against the Tigers. He's got a good kick, a good mark. We need to develop those guys, and they're what we have going forward.
Look, with that, boys, I reckon we move on to some previews, and it's a pretty good way to move into the preview for Richmond and Melbourne.
That's an absolute huge game. I reckon the loser of this is going to get booed off the MCG.
Look, either way it goes, one team's going to be heavily criticised, and even the winner's not going to get a whole load of praise for winning. It's one of those games that you need to win just so that you don't lose.
It eases the pressure. This is danger game for both teams. I mean, have you ever seen this early in a season? I mean, everyone was saying Melbourne were one of those outside chance sides that could jump in, maybe steal the finals. But, I think if they got Sylvia back, if they got Maloney back, if they played consistently, I think they can still be one of those outside sides. But if they lose today, I reckon it's gone.
Look, I think the forward line's just going to do it with Richmond. You're going to have Nahas rotating through the midfield and going forward as that small option. Obviously, Riewoldt. Miller's really starting to come of age late, but he's coming of age. I think it has something to do with the new hairdo. But look, Richmond are starting to look threatening, and against a Melbourne side that have shown next to nothing, I think they'll get the job done pretty easily.
And when the Tigers are at $1.20 by the bookies, that's Melbourne are going pretty bad.
I think basically what I like about looking like this, is that Rance looked really good last week. You've got Ellis and Morris that can stabilise that defence. They're both good ball users. Morris has a solid body. And the fact is that frees up Deledio. Deledio has been named on a half-forward flank. If Deledio can allow his skill to be used further up the ground, that's going to pay so much dividends to Richmond's chances of being that outside chance of making finals. I personally think... I don't think Melbourne will get blown away. I think it'll be Richmond by 3 goals.
Just looking at the last time they met, Richmond, they sprayed a few shots and they only beat Melbourne by 7 points. I think it's going to be a close one. They're both in a sort of a bad place at the moment in terms of their footy, but I think Richmond should get up.
Quick question: who takes Mitch Clark?
Mitch Clark, you'd say Rance. I mean, he's lined up on Rance. Rance was great last week on... Was it Cloak? He was on both, wasn't he? He was on Cloak and Dawes.
And he racked up 34 disposals, 17 marks.
He was sensational. It's something you want from a defender, someone who's got strong hands and someone who can just kill the ball.
Look, I agree. Melbourne, I don't think will get blown out of the water. I reckon we've still got a few fighters in there, and Jones and Magner in midfield, but I reckon we'll lose in the midfield. We'll probably lose 4 or 5 goals, I reckon.
Maddie, your tip?
I could see this one getting out, honestly. Richmond seemed to win the majority of the one-on-one battles all over the ground. Just Richmond by about 6, 7 or 8 goals for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be Richmond as well, probably by about 4 or 5 goals. It'll be interesting to see how David responds to being dropped.
And the other game in Adelaide, we've got the Power taking on the Swans at 2 o'clock at Amy Stadium, should I say. Port Adelaide haven't looked too bad.
Now, I like the look of Port Adelaide. They've really rethunk their...
We're using them reading words, aren't we?
Rethunked them. Yeah, they've rethought the way they've gone about their football over the preseason. The memberships department has had a complete overhaul. On field, they've had a complete overhaul. Now, players that have just been nowhere, all of a sudden just popping up and really contributing towards games. Jay Schultz is the number one guy I'd like to mention because he's offering a target. He's doing something that he hasn't been able to do for a long time, and that's be a consistent forward.
I mean, even like the absence of Roden today, Roden was admitted, but Robbie Gray's back. He can kick a goal. He's that link that they used to get to Stewart and Schultz. Schultz led up fantastically against the Bombers last week. I think, Matty, we saw in that last quarter at the game, he ran into space and he really troubled Essendon's defence. They look all round as if they're playing with more confidence. Pearce, I haven't seen in years run with that sort of dash off half back. Carlisle is always solid at full back. It's a shame because everyone else, has struggled to do their job last year. You'd say Sydney, they didn't impress me last week. They haven't impressed me at all this year. I still think they're not going to make finals. What do you boys think?
I think Sydney had still definitely a chance. Every year people have the conversation that Sydney aren't going to be making the finals, but they still always end up there. So I think they're probably not certainties this year, but I still have them up there. That they'll probably be around the 8 to 10 mark.
I just want the only reason why I'd say that is because they just look... I don't think he slows the word. They look lethargic and they just don't move the ball.
Sluggish,
yeah. They've always gone... They've taken their time and gone for the low-risk option. I understand that. But I just think with players getting back in zones, you just can't afford to do that anymore. Against the Dockers, they got out to a 40-point lead. They could have put the foot on the gas, but they didn't. And Freo came back at them, and Freo were pretty bad themselves. Personally, I think the Swans by 15.
It'll be interesting to see how Redden performs against Munford today. I reckon, that's where it's going to be one for Sydney. And McCarthy, he's another one. He's been an awesome pickup. He's been one of the best pickups, I think, this year in terms of mature age players. He's performed really well. Yeah, I'd say Sydney, they should win.
Look, I think I'm going to have to go with an upset for this one. Port Adelaide really impressed me round one. They lost last week against Essendon, but they really pushed the Bombers in Melbourne. Sydney in round one, they weren't great against GWS, it must be said. And as Ben alluded to before, against Fremantle, they really could have put the foot on the throat. They didn't manage to do it. They left the door open. I think Port Adelaide might steal this one.
I'm going to agree with you there. I've tipped Port Adelaide for an upset. I reckon they'll be a bit quicker coming off the rebound than Sydney with the inclusion of Gray going forward, Pearce off half-back, Hartlett through the middle. I reckon they'll be a bit quicker, and with the home ground advantages they always have, Dan and Amy, I reckon they'll win by 3-4 goals.
Yeah, I think Sydney will get up, but I think Gray will have a big day out and probably kick about 5 goals, but Sydney by about 2 goals.
Other game in Perth at 20-5, the Dockers take on the Brisbane Lions. Fremantle disappointing last week, the Lions equally disappointing. Your thoughts?
I don't think you can compare Fremantle at home to Fremantle away. At home, they are near unbeatable, honestly. They're a magnificent football side. They beat Geelong at home. They struggled badly against Sydney away. Look, I just think they're going to win comfortably, even with Brown back.
I think, just looking at the team sheets, they've put Dawson on Leuenberger. I can't explain that.
I mean, Dawson on anybody.
I'm not a coach, but he's going to get absolutely monstered.
I wouldn't put Dawson on Dawson.
I'd probably put him on a witch's hat. Yeah. Well, he is a witch's hat.
In fact, I'd put Dawson on Watts. That'd be
Dawson
interesting.
on the internet.
Oh my God, can we... Jesus Christ. Yeah. Basically, well, it's going to be won and lost in the midfield, this one. You can see it's Fife... they've put Broughton in the midfield, but settle down. He'll be tagging what's his name, Jack Redden. Rich, they've stuck Beams up forward, who's
how
usually.
About this? They got the debutant in Longer against Sandilands.
He looks all right, doesn't he?
He looks all right, but against
Billy Longer.
He looks pretty good.
Doesn't Sandy look a bit off with his injured toe or whatever?
He
just keeps doing his feet.
How tall is he? Is he
Longer's
11.
And is he slight or has he got a bit of beef? I don't know much about it. Is he?
Well, I don't know too much about him, but I reckon he'll be alright.
He's got a bit of weight on him. All he needs to do is just stand there and just push him out.
Loving the educated guesses. No, I think even on the wings they've got Rockcliffe on Hill, they've got Mundy on Adcock, so
and Crowley in the centre.
That's a big call to play on Rich. So you suggest he'll be tagging. They've got Brisbane and put Polkinghorne in the middle, which frees up Banfield. It's just one of those games where you just don't know if the Lions are going to show up. And I'm tipping the Dockers because they're at home, I think, by 20.
I say the Dockers. A few people I've spoken to, they reckon it's going to be a massive blow, but I don't reckon it is. I don't really rate Freo as highly as what I did coming into the season. They haven't really shown much for me to actually change my thoughts on them.
Only a win over Geelong.
Apart from that, but last week they performed pretty badly against Sydney. I reckon they're going to win today, but or tonight rather. Yeah, not by much.
Fremantle at home, as I said before, Fremantle at home is much different to Fremantle away. At home, they'll absolutely dominate the Lions by 60 plus.
Yeah, I think Freo will give the heave-ho to the Lions. So it's going to be a thumping. It's going to be, I think 12 goals plus.
Well, I can't see it being a comfortable victory at all. It's either going to be really close or just absolute destruction of the Lions. I don't know what to tip, to be honest. I'll just tip Freo. I'll just stick with that.
Well, tonight, Metricon Stadium at 20-8. Dustin Fletcher's 350th game. Congrats to him. Gold Coast versus the Bombers. Come on.
Do you remember what happened last time?
It's 22 blokes on one.
Look, you can't get on Gold Coast, honestly. You just can't back them.
Look, with their players, it's just as if they don't want to run back defensively. Like, it's as if they've looked at the game of AFL and looked at highlight reels and gone, oh, that's easy, I get a kick and run. But no, they don't work hard off the ball. Weller hasn't done enough. Prestia hasn't worked. Mackenzie last week was horrible.
I mean, they're all young players, though. So,
they're young players, but young players can tackle. They didn't tackle. There was no pressure against the Saints last week. Bernal hasn't got that thing. The only one who can the only few that can hold their heads up would be Lynch, Swallow, Ablett. Well, naturally Ablett. Caddy, he's done okay. After that, it just falls away.
Look, with Gold Coast, it seems as though they don't really want it. They just think that success is going to come to them. They have to start looking as though they're going to take on games and really attack the ball and make it look as though they want to win a game.
I mean, the thing is, with football, once you lose the ball, you have to fight like hell to get it back, and they're just not doing that. Personally, I think the Bombers by 80. Fletcher will go to Sam Day. Ryder's been named at full forward. Hurley, I think, will be pretty... actually be the one who won't have a big game. Bock will play on him. I think Bock will shut him down. But I can just see blokes like Zaharakis, Crameri and Jetta just getting off the leash.
And Reimers is back. He kicked 8 goals against the Gold Coast last time around.
What do you reckon, 16 tonight?
I think it's meant to be windy conditions, so I actually don't think it will be a blowout. It'll be Essendon by about 5 or 6 goals.
Right. Yeah, I'd say Essendon by about 50 points.
Where does Bock play?
Bock?
Forward or back?
At the moment, I'd say back because they need him there. And I also think they still need to develop Lynch and Day. They will come good.
I think they'll play him forward, but he needs to play back. They need to work on the defensive side of their game. With that said, Essendon by 60.
Tonight at Etihad Stadium, it's the Dogs taking on the Saints. This is one of those toss of a coin games, isn't it?
It's going to be very, very close.
The Saints... Looking at the fixture last year, you wouldn't say, this game would be as close as everyone thought it would be. Just looking at the Saints, they look a bit not off. It's just that there's no fluency. A bit like the Swans, there's just no fluency to their game. Still looking for the safe option when they could risk it, put all their chips on the table, could find a better option up the ground and move the ball a bit faster, and there's more chance to score.
I think all the tools are there. They've got the majority of the side that played in the grand finals a couple of years ago. They've got all the tools there, just a matter of putting all the parts together and fixing all the puzzle pieces in the right place. Look, Rewalt is he's flying under the radar. He's actually had a very good start to the season, very solid pre-season, so I could see him contributing to the result.
And just having a look, Stanley, he'll be a good player. Jack Stephen, continued improvement by him. He's named on a half-forward flank. Tom Ledger, he was okay last week when he came in. So the thing is that they've started to figure out that they need the youth. They can't keep going at the rate that they're going playing senior players. They're going to have to start rotating. There's talk down there that they might even have to trade one of their A-graders to get a draft pick. Do you guys think that's a chance this year?
Carlton.
Finally, yeah.
Every year.
I think the Saints have close to 8 or 9 players for their top tier who are coming out of the contract, and with free agency I expect them to lose 1 or 2, which I think is a good thing. I think their premiership window is closed, as it is with the Western Bulldogs. It's time for them to rebuild, get a new set of leaders in the team so they can have another shot in 3 or 4 years' time.
They've got Jared Ruffhead's brother. What's his name? Jordan. Their parents are very original. I like that. But anyway, he's named at full forward. Can he help Jones?
Not really. He doesn't seem to do anything. He gets named in a key position spot, but he doesn't really bob up. He might kick a goal every couple of games, but he doesn't provide a consistent target.
I think what doesn't help his development is he's the only one there. And not only has he got no one to learn off, it's just that he's always the one where there's 4 defenders coming in over the top and stopping him. That really, dwarfs the range he can learn the game, because if he had another forward there, you got one leading off the other way and he can lead in the other pocket. There's just no space for him.
But still, he's named on Sam Gilbert playing at full back. I don't rate Sam Gilbert as a full back. I don't know where he's really meant to play, to be honest. I reckon Doggy's forwards have a good chance tonight. Dowhouse named in the forward pocket. He could kick a few. Grant has another chance to make a mark. Higgins as well. I don't think they've still got the key defenders to stop Roughhead and Jones as well, the Saints.
So I personally think Saints by a kick. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, I'd say St Kilda, they're going to win it up forward. Riewoldt, I'm tipping to have a big one. Saints by about 3 goals.
Yeah, I'll mirror the thoughts of Damon there. Saints have too much firepower in comparison to the Bulldogs. Saints by 30.
I'll go the Saints by about 3-4 goals, but yeah, it'll be close.
Yeah, I guess it's unanimous. I'll go with the Saints as well. I think they'll win it quite comfortably.
Tomorrow out at Blacktown International Sports Park, the Giants take on the Eagles.
Do we need to do tips for this one?
Probably not.
Sydney, surely.
Probably just the margins. Just
the margins.
Will it be 3 figures or 4?
4 figures. 150,000 points.
They've got a brighter future than Melbourne, though, I do have to say.
Burn. Can you smell that? Can you smell what's cooking? Nah, basically, it's about improvement. Corns looked as if he was the only bloke in defence last week. Bug is going to be a great tagger. Aside from that...
And Green's showing good signs
Green's done well. He's picked up ball off half-back. Too bad that their structure just fell apart last week in the wind. Eagles by about 110.
And other one that stands out is Corns. He's reinvented his game. He's playing an awesome year so far. And they've got Brogan to come back in the ruck to support the young Giles, who's mature age, I suppose, but he still is quite raw. Yeah, obviously West Coast by I'd say just under 100 points. I reckon they're going to take their foot off the pedal. But yeah, there weren't pleasing signs last week for GWS.
Glass, Pritis, Rosa and Embley all being omitted because quote-unquote injuries, just various injuries, wink wink. And still they look like a much better team, so it's got to be West Coast by all the points.
I reckon they have no reason not to slow down against the Giants, because you look at the race for the premiership this year, there's 5 teams in contention. They need all the percentage they can get. I reckon Eagles by 120.
I reckon Greater Western Sydney. No, only joking. I think I'd love for Sheeds, Greater Western Sydney to win this, but I think they'll probably have to wait for Gold Coast or some of the other, Melbourne maybe, for that game, which will happen down the track. But I think West Coast to win 100+.
Okay, let's quickly get through these last 2. More contentious game at the MCG tomorrow. The Hawks take on the Crows. Anyone giving the Crows a chance? Hawthorn's defence is a bit depleted.
I don't understand. Hawthorn are overwhelming favourites, and yet Adelaide actually look as though they could do a lot of damage to...
I reckon Tex, Porps and Tippett could get off the leash if
they're
not
That forward
careful.
line versus Hawthorn's back line will create some interesting matchups, to say the least. I don't think that Adelaide should be taken lightly in this one.
I'm really liking some of these midfield matchups. Just Lewis on Dangerfield, Sewell on Van Berlo, and Mitchell going head-to-head with Scott Thompson. That is an absolute ripper.
There's plenty of numbers, I think, on the end of the stat sheets.
So I personally reckon the Hawks by 5 kicks. Crows will give them a scare, but you just can't go past Hawthorn. Franklin, Rioli, Roughhead's back in the team. He could go to centre-half back.
So Shields?
Yes.
Liam Shields is back.
He's got fantastic kick on him.
Yeah, I reckon Hawks by about 4 goals, but it's not going to be close by any means. With the Hawks back line, as he said, Walker and Tippett and Paul Pleasure should have good days, but I don't think the midfield will stop Adelaide.
Yeah, I reckon the Hawks by, under two goals. I think Adelaide's got a pretty decent record against Hawthorn. Last time they matched up, it was over in Adelaide, but they beat the Hawks by 20 points. Hawthorn for me, but it's going to be a close one.
I could see Adelaide coming in and really giving this one a red-hot crack and leading at half-time, maybe even three-quarter time, but I think Hawthorn will get over them in the end because they want it and need it more.
I think the Hawthorn, for me, they are the premiership favourites, and they're going to get better with Hodge coming back in soon as well. I think they'll win it reasonably comfortably. Next week it is.
And the final game, the Kangas take on the Cats at Etihad, the Twilight match.
I think this is match of the round for mine, honestly.
Are you fucking around? That's my fourth one. Are you fucking around?
No,
you shut up. Are you fucking around?
No,
okay, it's my last one.
I honestly think this one's going to go down to the wire. There's some very interesting matchups, and usually the games are played at Skilled Stadium. This one's at Etihad. North, look, a lot of people underestimate North. Geelong, they're cruising at the moment, but look, I can just see this one being a close one.
That's the thing. I just think North Melbourne's defence isn't what it should be to face Geelong. I think they should have brought in maybe Hansen or maybe someone. I mean, they've brought in Cam Delaney, but I just, matching him up on Hawkins. Hawkins is going to beat him in the air. Delaney's great on the ground. He's mobile for such a big centre half back defender. He's not necessarily big, but he's extremely mobile.
I think North's sort of their game plan does tend to trouble Geelong, so I think it will be a lot closer than a lot of people think, and it'll be good to see how far North have come over the past year, because if they get smashed today, I think they are well off the page to making finals.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, they'll certainly play on. They've implemented their handball game plan. Personally, I think Geelong just be too strong around the contest, 4 to 5 goals.
Yeah, I reckon Geelong actually are gonna blow North out of the water. Only reason it might be close is because Geelong had a tough game on Monday against the Hawks. The reason I reckon it's going to be a blowout is because, as you said, Ben, with the defence of North Melbourne, I don't think they can match up well on the forwards of Geelong. Hawkins took 12 marks like last week, was best on ground for mine. Pods as well, he's going to have a bit of a rip snorter, and Johnson as well, he's in good form. So yeah, Geelong by over 50 points.
I've tipped the Cats, but I'm honestly not comfortable in doing it. I think that North Melbourne might pull out one out of the bag here.
It's just one of those games where you have the feeling that it might be closer than most people expect. I still expect Geelong to win, but the inclusion of Zeeble, I reckon, will be a big plus for North Melbourne. But I reckon Geelong by 4 goals.
Yeah, I think Geelong's midfield will be too strong for North Melbourne, but it will be close. I think probably by Geelong by about 12 points.
But seriously, how good is that Jack Zeeble?
He's not as good as that Jack Watts character.
Nothing. He's got absolutely nothing on Jack Watts. Anyway, I think we should wrap that up.
That wraps up another show. That's 4 down.
Now, we should talk about next week, because we're live on radio.
We're live on air, so we can't have the technical difficulties that we have in the studio.
And probably not the 5 F words for Ben as well.
Oh, well, I used my opportunity. I've used them all up. You boys are free to use them now.
Fuck.
No, we didn't want listeners for next week, though.
Yeah, well, we do want you to tune in, but there'll be less of that.
So what's the... do you want to give details?
Next week we're going to be going a regular 10 a.m. time slot. We're only on for an hour, unfortunately, but that's one excellent hour for your week to make it more exciting.
Why don't I cut out CSI to make time?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
We'll double the quality for you guys. So
we'll get rid of the bad half and keep the good half. So that's going to be 10 a.m. every Saturday morning for an hour on 90.7 Sin FM.
You've been listening to Bound for Glory, and here it is.